Good morning. I got a request from a TikTok user named Chancake Pancake, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, to talk about the Buddhist precepts and how they relate to pornography. As this user points out, pornography is really easy to access these days, so it's an important question to consider. And I want to give you a couple caveats before we jump into it. The first is that when I talk about nuances, I am not talking about illegal pornography. So if we're talking about stolen pictures or child pornography or things that are clearly just flat out unethical, none of what I'm going to talk about applies to that. That's just bad. The other thing that I'm going to talk about is that, or the other caveat is that Soto Zen does not have an official stance on the use of pornography. And when I talked to my teacher, Daijaku Roshi, she does not have an official stance either. And so what you're going to get is my thinking about pornography through the lens of the precepts. And as I always like to say, the precepts are a question we need to try to answer rather than a set of prescriptive rules. So you're not just going to get a porn bad or even a porn good. What you're going to get is a how do we investigate this question of pornography through the lens of the precepts. And I think that we could use almost any of the precepts to examine this question, but I picked the three that I thought were most easily relatable to pornography. So the first thing is the precept of not misusing sexuality. The second is the precept of not taking what is not given. And the third is the precept of not abusing intoxicants. I think these three lenses are really good ways to examine the question of pornography in the modern world. So the first lens, when we think about not misusing sexuality, we always have to start with not breaking the rules of your community and or your relationships. If you are in a community, such as a monastic community, that does have a prescriptive rule against pornography, then you shouldn't break it. You have joined that community and you have agreed to abide by those rules. Don't do it. The next is if you are in a relationship where you have talked with your partner or partners and the use of pornography is considered cheating, then you should not look at pornography. If that feels overly restrictive to you, that's something that you should talk to your partner about, but you shouldn't just break the relationship rules that you're in because you want to. That's not ethical. That's really not how it should work. And especially in this digital age where all different kinds and flavors of pornography are available, so you do need to negotiate that with your partner or partners. Is looking at pictures okay, but videos is not? Are pictures and videos okay, but chatting with people online is not? Like it's kind of a sliding scale, and one of the dangers of easily accessible pornography is that the kind of like extremity of it can go from 0 to as far as you want with really just the click of another mouse button. And so I think really clear understandings of what the guidelines are of your community and or your relationships is really, really important. So that aspect of not misusing sexuality, not breaking the rules of your community or your relationship, not cheating, not lying to your partner or your partners or your community is really important. And so not misusing sexuality, I think, relates to pornography in that way, because it is a sexual energy that's being expended. And as we know, sex is one of the most powerful drives in the human world and leads to a lot of hardships, and people do really, really dumb things when they're kind of caught by their sexual urges and needs. Not that sexual urges and needs are bad. I'm a fairly sex positive person, but I think we know that they can lead us towards some bad paths. So just be aware of that. In terms of not taking what is not given, I think we know that exploitation can be a large part of pornography and sex work. I do not think that pornography or sex work always has to involve exploitation, but I think if we're being honest, and I've said this before, it very often does, and we might not know what level of exploitation is being involved. If you're looking at, if we're talking about like stolen pictures, like we've seen like phone leaks and things like that, or revenge porn, where a disgruntled former partner posts pictures without the consent of their ex to try to hurt them, that's clearly taken what is not given. And if you partake in that, you are partaking in stealing and exploitation of that person, which does also feel to me like a misuse of sexuality. These categories are not distinct and separate. I think these are just three lenses that we can talk about. So are you taking what is not given? Was this person exploited because they were young or in a financially vulnerable state, and we might not know that, but I think you need to be aware of and understand that there is a good chance that you are engaging in the exploitation of another person. It's very possible. It might even be likely in the way that most modern porn industries are handled. So that is a question that you should not brush off. That is something that you should be thinking about and deciding how you want to negotiate with that. And also, I think especially with online where it's images or videos through a screen, there's a tendency to treat the other person like an object. And even if it's pictures or video, that is another human, and they deserve to be treated with the same reverence and respect as any other human. It can be very dehumanizing and separating feeling being on the other side of a computer screen. And we see this even with comments. I just had to make a video about right speech in the comment section because I think there's this sense of separation through a computer screen, but that is still a person. That is a living, breathing, thinking person. And when we lose sight of that and we treat them like an object, or we think of them as an object, then that's problematic. And to me, that is in a way taking what is not given, because we are using a person, and that's problematic. So be aware of that. And then the not abusing intoxicants. And there's really two ways that I want us to think about this. So on the one hand, porn addiction can be a real thing. People can get addicted to pornography, and there are studies about it, and there are rehab clinics and things like that. And so if you are using pornography to get a constant hit of dopamine or escapism, I think it's problematic. If you are finding yourself investing lots of energy and money and thought into pornography, if you can't go any amount of time without looking at pornography, if it's starting to affect your socialization and your functioning in life, it's getting in the way, it's a problem. And so we do want to think about, are you getting addicted to pornography? Is it leading to bad behavior? I think a thing to watch out for is looking at porn leading to your tastes or the things you're looking at getting more and more extreme, because like I said earlier, images or movies on the internet can go from 0 to really extreme at the click of a mouse button. It's really easy to just kind of hit that sliding scale and go farther and farther and farther along, and it can affect your relationships with other people. And so if any of those things are happening, I think you have to take a really strong look at what your relationship to pornography is. And that's the other piece about the not abusing intoxicants piece. When you look at the precepts, intoxicants themselves are not considered immoral. Like alcohol as a substance is not a inherently immoral substance. But what is talked about is it leads to heedlessness. So essentially, engaging in intoxicants leads you to breaking the other precepts because your judgment and your impulse control is impaired. And so, is pornography inherently unethical? I think that's questionable. Can it lead you into engaging in bad behaviors? I think probably. So we can look at being addicted to pornography, and we can look at what pornography is doing to you. And so when we examine the access or the use of pornography through the precepts, again, these questions of, is it misusing sexuality, or how is it leading me to misuse sexuality? Am I taking what is not given, or is it leading me to engage in taking what is not given, an exploitation? And am I using it like an intoxicant, or similar to intoxicants leading me into doing bad things? Am I engaging in behavior that is problematic? Because I think if you are lying or hiding about your pornography usage to your community or your partner, I think we can acknowledge that that's really problematic. I do want to end with, because I think it's a loaded topic, again, I want to be very clear that as a person, I'm pretty sex positive, and I do not think that pornography or sex work is inherently it has to be unethical or engage in exploitation. Sometimes people talk about selling your body, and I always think, well, if is sex work or pornography more selling your body than working in a mine or in a factory where you end up getting cancer or debilitating injuries? So I don't know that on its own, pornography is more unethical than working in a coal mine, but I think that there's a lot of energy that goes to it. And so when you are thinking about these questions, just be careful not to fall into the trap of blaming or judging people who work in the industry, because I think that that's really problematic. Thank you.